Today's songwriting insights are from J.J. Heller, who is a songwriter, worship leader, and performing artist. This message was given to the Valley Christian High School worship team through Zoom. May it be helpful and encouraging to you as well.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and some tips.
Sure. Well, the very condensed version is I didn't start writing songs until the summer before my sophomore year of college. So all of you are way ahead of me. So that's awesome to start at the age that you are. And I never thought that I would make a career of singing and writing. It was something that I just did as almost a form of like processing all the things that I was going through. And it was very therapeutic for me. And I was really surprised when I would play the songs that I had written for the girls in my dorm, and they would say, "Oh my gosh, like your song is exactly what I'm going through right now. It feels like you read my journal and then wrote the song." And so shortly after I started writing songs, I met Dave and we started playing music together. And then we got engaged and decided that we were going to try to make a career of music once we graduated, and then got married. And we
graduated college.
Yeah, graduated from college and then got married.
Really, how old were you when you got engaged?
Well, when we were married, I was 23 and JJ was 22.
Oh, that sounds great. Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool.
So, but the Bay Area is really expensive. We were living in San Jose, and so we moved to where my family is in Arizona. So it was a lot less expensive to live out there, but it's not really a great music city. But it was where we started making JJ's first albums. And we didn't have a record deal. We were just doing everything independently, which essentially means we were our own little small business. And a big part of having a small business is that you need to make more money than what you spend. And so like we made sure that when we made JJ's albums that they were inexpensive enough that we knew how many, at the time you had to sell CDs, how many CDs we needed to sell in order to pay for the studio time that we put into making those albums. But
that makes sense, yes.
Yeah, but you should talk about So You Think You Can Dance, because that's where things get interesting.
Okay, so we gave ourselves a year. We said like, okay, our first year of marriage, we'll try music. If it's a train wreck, we'll get normal jobs. And at the end of that year, it was kind of a little bit of a toss up. Like, okay, we're barely eking by, but let's just give it one more year and see what happens. And at the end of that year, it was just enough momentum to keep going. And we were used to like a low standard of living. Like we
shared a cell phone, we shared a car, we didn't have cable TV. Like we ate off of the dollar menu at McDonald's and just kind of like scraping by.
Yeah, not glamorous at all. And then we just kept working hard and writing songs, and eventually we moved from Phoenix to Nashville. And we lived in Nashville for a few years. And while we were there, we co-wrote with some other writers just a handful of times. And we ended up writing a song with a gal named Katie Herzig. And it was a song mostly about like my experience with panic attacks and anxiety. At the time, it was like something that was happening every day for me, multiple times a day. And so the song was just about like, where is God when we're suffering, and why doesn't he always answer our prayers the way that we want him to? And it's a song called Your Hands. And we ended up once that record that we made was completed, we ended up giving it away for free for a while, which was like revolutionary at the time. Like nobody was giving away music online. But like, I think Radiohead had just done it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're
this
like,
is ancient history.
I know,
This is
this
long
is
before.
what, like 12 years ago?
Yeah, this is long before Spotify was even a thing.
Oh,
Siri doesn't even
confused.
know what we're talking about. Okay, so anyhow, we gave away this album and a bunch of people downloaded it. And one of the people who downloaded the album was a dancer who tried out on the TV show So You Think You Can Dance. And they used JJ's song on that TV show. And one of the people who happened to watch that TV show ran a radio station in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
And so that guy heard JJ's lyrics and said, I think that's a Christian artist. And he ran a Christian station with a listenership of like 500,000 people or something like that. And
Whoa.
he played JJ's song on his station, and people started calling in and saying that song really meant a lot to me. And then people would hear somebody else call, and then they would call in and tell their story about the song. And pretty soon that station contacted a bunch of other stations and said, hey, we're playing the song by this girl, JJ Heller. You should play it too. And so before the end of the year, that was like in October, and before the end of the year, JJ's song was being played all over the country, which was really amazing.
Yeah, it was like the song was on the Billboard charts, and it was just insane because, first of all, like the kind of music that we make isn't the kind that you would normally hear on the radio, and so that was never even really an ambition of ours. And so it just, the whole thing felt very miraculous how it all happened.
But the one thing that I wanted to make sure to say is that when you are writing a song, one of the most important things I think is to consider that you're normally writing it for somebody. And so if you're writing that song for somebody, you need to imagine who that person is and what it is that they're feeling and what it is that they're going through. So that like what can happen a lot of the time with music is you just have these sort of vague ideas of like, I'm going to write this for somebody and hopefully they will like it. And I'm going to release my music and hopefully someone will hear it and maybe something successful will happen someday. And by not getting specific about it, you just end up sort of floating around a little bit aimlessly.
Yeah, I mean, I think even like a creative exercise is to, like, you can even read a book and write a song for a character in a book, or watch a film and say like, okay, I'm going to write a song for this character in this film, just as like an exercise. I was thinking of like an example of a song that we wrote that it is kind of ironic that like the more specific you get with things, the more it connects with people, because you would think it would be the opposite. Like you would think like, I'm just going to make this really vague so that everybody can relate to it. But that doesn't really work. And so one of my more popular songs right now is a song called Missing Piece, and it's Peace. And we wrote it with a friend of ours, and we were thinking of like a person who is experiencing like an illness. All of these examples are like really
tragedies.
So these are the lyrics of this song. I know it's here somewhere, the faith I used to have before the sky fell down on me. Behind the curtain, beneath the hospital bed, hiding just beyond my reach. Feels like my prayers are bouncing off the ceiling tiles like a helium balloon. I can't close the distance between the way I feel and what I know is true. I'm caught up in a battle I wasn't looking for when I'm searching for solace in the middle of a war. And in the chorus is, you are my missing piece. And so we could have just said, I know you're hurting. I know you're scared, but God is your source of peace. But there's something about writing about like a helium balloon on the ceiling. It's just like these tangible expressions that kind of draws the listener in. Let's see, one thing that I do a lot is I keep a running list of ideas on my phone. I've heard a writer talking about it like stocking the pond, like it's a metaphor about fishing, where like you stock the pond with fish so that when it's time to go fishing, you have something to catch. And so like I don't always have like,
when you go to sit down to write, sometimes it's like I don't know what I want to say.
yeah.
But like,
Or if I'm feeling inspired, I don't always have the time to sit down and write a song in that moment. So I just keep a running list up on my phone of like, it could be just a word or a phrase or a concept. And I just keep it cataloged like song ideas, spring 2021. And then every time like a new season turns over, I'll start a new list. And it's so helpful when it's time to sit down and write, because a lot of times I'll look back at the list and I'll see like there are a lot of things that are kind of similar in theme. And so I can put all of those ideas together and then I sound really smart.
Yeah, one of the things that that it took us a long time to figure out is that sometimes you'll go to write a song or a poem or whatever it is, and you only write a couple of things, or you write a melody that you don't feel very good about. And you can sometimes walk away from that experience, whether you spent an hour on it or 20 minutes or 5 hours on it, feeling kind of like that time was wasted or it was a failure. But what we like to do in that circumstance is just think of it as kind of laying a foundation that you can return to and start sort of like removing the good parts that came from that moment, that you can include in some future work. Like you don't have to crumple up the paper and throw it away. Like you can hold on to the good ideas, the like pick out the little flecks of gold in that mound of dirt and use that productively.
That's great. Hey, one thing I wanted to ask you too, do you write together? Because we have talked about, co-writing, and some of our students don't play guitar or piano, and they have to kind of help ask someone else to help them with things. And so you two write together, right?
Yes. We do. Yeah. And that was, man, co-writing is really hard. Like it's definitely something that takes practice. And for us, at first, I did like 98% of the songwriting, but I don't really play an instrument very well. And so I would write it on the guitar and then I would take it to Dave and he would make it sound really good. But slowly over the years, it has become more of a collaborative process. But at first, I would write a song from start to finish. I would present it to Dave, kind of with this idea of like, ta-da, isn't this amazing? And then, he would critique it and my feelings would get hurt and I would get really mad. And so we had to kind of figure that out. Like, I had to learn to not be as sensitive and to also just kind of assess, like before I played a song for Dave, I had to kind of evaluate my emotional state and ask myself, like, am I ready for feedback in this moment, or am I still too close to this song and I just need some space? And sometimes that's what happens. And sometimes I just have to say like, hey, I'm going to play this for you, but I'm not ready for any like criticism. I just want to play it for you. But sometimes I'm like, okay, here's what it is. Feel free to like, we can tear it apart, put it back together, whatever, it's fine. And then he's also learned how to be a lot more tactful and gentle in the way that he phrases things, like lead with a compliment.
you.